Greetings, adventurers. I'm Scott, the founder of the Trinamic Fantasy Role-Playing Adventure System. I wanted to talk to you today about role-playing in general for systems, and in particular about movement and as it relates to terrain. We have a lot of redundancy and repetitiveness when we look at what terrain and how it's dealt with. A lot of systems tend to call it rough or difficult, and they end up just taking off half your movement automatically, and the players know that. They don't have to go running onto the train and then experience it. They don't have to actually look and ask the question, like, well, what does that terrain look like? Do I notice anything in particular that makes it difficult to walk or move? But can avoid that, those types of questions, and I can just say once they start to move, be like, I can just tell them like, hey, look, if you're going to do your full movement, I'm going to require an agility check or a dexterity check. And if you make it, you'll have no problems moving. Sometimes they'll even ask me, well, what happens if I don't make it? Well, I don't know. You should just try going across the rocks and finding out, because that's the reality of how things really do work. We don't necessarily just know what's going to happen because of it. So when they go across, if they just barely miss their check, I might just take away 5 feet of movement. Maybe I'll dock them half. But if they really miss it, in the case of rocks, I might put it where their ankle is trapped in between the rocks. Now they're restrained. They've already used up their movement action at this point. Are they going to use a simple action or a main action to try to pull their foot out? Are they in combat that they need to switch weapons and just use range? Typically, players don't switch weapons. So this is how we can kind of encourage them to try to react to situations differently and come up with new ways to handle problems and issues. So if they're going to tell me that when they're moving across the rocks, rather than using their agility, that they have acrobatics, I might allow for that. But I might look for more, like, what is it that you're really going to do that would help you move across those rocks with acrobatics? And in my system in particular, a player, when they create their character or as they progress their character, they can choose to focus on a certain area of a skill and make it a specific function. Like, for instance, acrobatics, they could focus on balance. So in this case, a player could just state to me, oh, I'd like to use balance. And if they're not a good gamer and they kind of struggle with coming up with ideas and kind of role-playing things out, I'm probably just going to let that go so that they can, enjoy it and that they got to use that function they created. And for other players, I'm going to look for more from them. I'll be like, well, yeah, but how are you going to get across it? Like, what would you do? How would balance work? And so if they start talking about, well, I'm trying to avoid these sharp pointed edges, I'm looking for flat spots, and when rocks tend to kind of like shift on me, I'll be able to use balance to hold myself in place. I'm like, okay, hey, that's great. What a way to solve that problem. I'm going to let you use your balance score. This really helps to play out the character and their concept that they created. But we don't have to just use a skill. We can use their backstory, where they came from. We can use their race. Are they a dwarf that grew up in the mountains? Or are they a dwarf that was isolated and taken away and lived on a ship? So they wouldn't have that rocky relationship. Because if they do have enough correlation, whether it's mechanical skills, mechanical ability, is it backstory, the combination of these different things, that we should just let them pass and worry about other players that need to roll. Because we still want the game to flow and not be broken down into constant rolling. As well, when we talk about this balance, we can talk about movement in trees as well. When somebody's climbing a tree and then they're going to go out on a branch. So we just say it's climbing, and then at some point we'll say, oh, if you're going to do something on there, it's acrobatics again. Well, in this case, a player could use that balance, but as well, acrobatics would make just as much sense to me, because of the nature of a moving branch while they're doing stuff and then climbing itself at the same time. But then we go to rooftop. Now we can have rogues that are balancing on rooftops and they play out. So maybe I'd make a rogue role that grew up in the city and was balancing on rooftops. They'd get away with that for free and no role. But when they go to the Rocky Mountains and it's that kind of terrain, maybe I am going to make them roll in those conditions. So this is a lot of the ways we can play these things out, and give new dynamics to it. We can extend this to lots of different types of terrain and types of weather conditions that affect terrain. So how is mud different than deep snow? Because mud, easy to slip and fall. When you get stuck in mud, it's a real problem because it's even harder to get out of than just getting back up from snow. Snow is not as likely to fall as it is on ice. And ice, you fall, boy, that's a real difficult time as well. But if you're buried in mud and deep in mud, you can't just act and maybe sling a weapon around, or draw back a bow and arrow. But on ice, you could probably still get away with that. So this is how we can look at lots of different situations, get away from a rule set, start looking at what's role play and what's a guide that gives me ideas of how to work things and how to create. Hey, if you like my content, please subscribe. Please tell people about me as I'm trying to get more information out about my system, so I can go into pre-launch. If you end up going to my membership page and the library, you can sign up for free and you can download free content. I'll be putting up something about Kashi, which is a backstory. I've already put up Order of the Bees, which is some role-player information about a religious group, which may or may not have a different cultist module for a game master or adventure master to go ahead and download as well to introduce into gameplay. So, if you like what I'm doing, keep coming back for more and adventure well.